The Batman is a 2022 American superhero film based on the DC Comics character Batman. Produced by DC Films, 6th and Idaho, and Dylan Clark Productions, and distributed by Warner Bros. Pictures, it is a reboot of the Batman film franchise. The film was directed by Matt Reeves, who wrote the screenplay with Peter Craig. It stars Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne/Batman alongside Zoe Kravitz, Paul Dano, Jeffrey Wright, John Turturro, Peter Sarsgaard, Andy Serkis, and Colin Farrell. The film sees Batman, who has been fighting crime in Gotham City for 2 years, uncover corruption while pursuing the Riddler, a serial killer who targets Gotham's elite. Development began after Ben Affleck was cast as Batman in the DC Extended Universe in 2013. Affleck signed on to direct, produce, co-write, and star in The Batman, but had reservations about the project and dropped out. Reeves took over and reworked the story, removing the DCEU connections. He sought to explore Batman's detective side more than previous films, drawing inspiration from the films of Alfred Hitchcock and the New Hollywood era, and comics such as Year One, The Long Halloween, and Ego. Pattinson was cast in May 2019, with further casting in late 2019. Filming began in the United Kingdom in January 2020, but was halted in March by the COVID-19 pandemic. It resumed later in the year and concluded in Chicago in March 2021. After the COVID-19 pandemic caused 2 delays to its original June 2021 release date, The Batman premiered at the Lincoln Center in Manhattan on March 1, 2022, and was theatrically released worldwide on March 4. The film was a commercial success, and grossed over $770 million against a $185-200 million budget, making it the 5th highest grossing film of 2022. It also received generally positive reviews, with praise for the performances, score, cinematography, Reeves' direction, action sequences, and story, although the runtime received some criticism. The Batman is intended to launch a Batman shared universe, with 2 sequels planned and 2 spin-off television series in development for HBO Max. Plot: on Halloween, Gotham City Mayor Don Mitchell Jr. is murdered by the Riddler, a masked killer. Reclusive billionaire Bruce Wayne, who has operated for 2 years as the vigilante Batman, investigates the murder alongside the Gotham City Police Department. Lieutenant James Gordon discovers a message that the Riddler left for Batman. The following night, the Riddler kills Commissioner Pete Savage and leaves another message for Batman. Batman and Gordon discover that the Riddler left a thumb drive in Mitchell's car containing images of Mitchell with a woman, Annika Kosalov, at the Iceberg Lounge, a nightclub operated by the Penguin, gangster Carmine Falcone's lieutenant. While the Penguin pleads ignorance, Batman notices that Selina Kyle, Annika's roommate, works at the club as a waitress. When Annika disappears, Batman sends Selina back to the Iceberg Lounge for answers and discovers that Savage was on Falcone's payroll, as is District Attorney Gil Colson. The Riddler abducts Colson, straps a timed collar bomb to his neck, and sends him to interrupt Mitchell's funeral. When Batman arrives, the Riddler calls him via Colson's phone and threatens to detonate the bomb if Colson cannot answer 3 riddles. Colson refuses to answer the third, the name of the informant who gave the GCPD information that led to a historic drug bust ending gangster Salvatore Maroni's operation, and dies. Batman and Gordon deduce that the informant may be the Penguin and track him to a drug deal. They discover that Maroni's operation transferred to Falcone, with many corrupt GCPD officers involved. Selina inadvertently exposes them when she arrives to steal money and discovers Annika's corpse in a car trunk. After a car chase, Batman captures the Penguin but learns he is not the informant. Batman and Gordon follow the Riddler's trail to the ruins of an orphanage funded by Bruce's murdered parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne, where they learn that the Riddler holds a grudge against the Wayne family. Bruce's butler and caretaker, Alfred Pennyworth, is hospitalized after opening a letter bomb addressed to Bruce. The Riddler leaks evidence that Thomas, who was running for mayor before he was murdered, hired Falcone to kill a journalist for threatening to reveal details about Martha and her family's history of mental illness. Bruce, who grew up believing his father was morally upstanding, confronts Alfred, who maintains that Thomas only asked Falcone to threaten the journalist into silence. Thomas planned to turn himself and Falcone over to the police once he found out Falcone murdered the journalist instead. Alfred believes that Falcone had Thomas and Martha killed to prevent this. Selina reveals to Batman that Falcone is her neglectful father. She decides to kill him after learning that he strangled Annika because Mitchell told her that Falcone was the informant. Batman and Gordon arrive in time to stop her, but the Riddler kills Falcone as he is being arrested. The Riddler is unmasked as forensic accountant Edward Nashton and is incarcerated in Arkham State Hospital, where he tells Batman he took inspiration from him when targeting the corrupt. Batman learns that Nashton has stationed car bombs around Gotham and cultivated an online following that plans to assassinate Mayor-elect Bella Real. The bombs destroy the seawall around Gotham and flood the city. Nashton's followers attempt to kill Real but are stopped by Batman and Selina. In the aftermath, Nashton befriends another inmate, while Selina deems Gotham beyond saving and leaves. Batman aids recovery efforts and vows to inspire hope in Gotham. Cast: Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne/Batman, a reclusive billionaire who obsessively protects Gotham City as a masked vigilante to cope with his traumatic past. Batman is around 30 years old and is not yet an experienced crime fighter, as director Matt Reeves wanted to explore the character before he becomes fully formed. Reeves and Pattinson described Batman as an insomniac who cannot delineate between the Batman persona and his recluse rockstar public identity as Bruce, with Reeves comparing his obsession with being Batman to a drug addiction. Pattinson said the film questions the nature of heroism, as Batman is more flawed than traditional superheroes and unable to control himself, seeking to work out his rage and inflict his kind of justice. Reeves considered the Batman a story about Batman learning that he must not exact vengeance, but inspire hope. Oscar Novak portrays a young Bruce, while Rick English was Pattinson's stunt double. Zoe Kravitz as Selina Kyle/Catwoman, a nightclub waitress, drug dealer, and cat burglar who meets Batman while searching for her missing roommate. Her moral ambiguity challenges Batman's black and white view of good and evil. Kravitz said the character is becoming a femme fatale and figuring out who she is, beyond just someone trying to survive. She described her as a mysterious character with unclear motivations, who represents femininity in contrast to Batman's masculinity. She said the pair are partner in crime, drawn together by their desire to fight for vulnerable people. Reeves saw Selina as Batman's awakening to his own sheltered upbringing and preconceived assumptions. Kravitz focused more on Selina than her Catwoman persona because she did not want to distract from the character's emotional journey, and interpreted Selina as bisexual, like the comics. Paul Dano as Edward Nashton/Riddler, a forensic accountant who is inspired by Batman to become a serial killer who targets elite Gotham citizens and live streams his crimes. He seeks to unmask the truth about Gotham, taunting Batman and law enforcement with riddles. Reeves said Batman inspiring the Riddler reflects the idea from the comics that he creates his own enemies and that the Riddler's attack on Gotham gives the character a political agenda as a terrorist-like figure. He found Batman and the Riddler being kind of two sides of the same coin unsettling, as they have similar goals. He likened the Riddler to the Zodiac Killer, who he felt was the real-life Riddler for his practice of communicating with ciphers and riddles, while Dano said his performance balanced the real-life basis with the Batman franchise's theatricality. Joseph Walker portrays a young Nashton. Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon, an ally of Batman in the Gotham City Police Department. He is the only GCPD officer whom Batman trusts, and they work together to solve the Riddler case. Wright described Gordon as relative to Gotham City, to the Gotham City Police Department, to Batman, to justice, and to corruption. Similar to Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy, Gordon begins as a GCPD lieutenant in The Batman, allowing his progression to commissioner to be depicted in subsequent films. Wright felt starting Gordon as the lieutenant enabled him to play a larger role compared to previous film iterations. Reeves felt that Batman and Gordon's partnership is emphasized more in The Batman than it was in previous Batman films, and compared them to Carl Bernstein and Bob Woodward from All the President's Men. John Turturro as Carmine Falcone, a Gotham crime boss and Selina's father. The Riddler's primary target, Falcone has much of Gotham under his control. Turturro described him as a dangerous guy, while Reeves said he was seemingly a genteel mobster, but turns out to have a very, very dark history behind him, and compared him to Noah Cross from Chinatown. The Batman suggests that Falcone played a role in Batman's origin story by ordering the murder of Thomas and Martha Wayne. Falcone wears vintage sunglasses throughout the film, as Turturro felt the character needed a mask. Peter Sarsgaard as Gil Colson, Gotham's district attorney, whom Sarsgaard described as untruthful and distasteful. Andy Serkis as Alfred Pennyworth, Batman's butler and mentor, though they have a strained relationship and rarely speak. Pattinson described Alfred as Batman's only confidant, even though Alfred thinks he's gone insane. Unlike previous film incarnations, Alfred has a military background, which is reflected in him being used to rules and regulations, structure, and precision, as well as his dress and demeanor. To illustrate Alfred's physical appearance as a military veteran, Reeves came up with the idea of him having a cane, while Serkis suggested his facial scars. Serkis shared that Alfred was part of the Secret Service and then the security team looking after Wayne Enterprises. His background led to him becoming more of a mentor and a teacher than the father figure that Bruce needed. Reeves noted that Alfred was forced into becoming Bruce's parental figure despite being inexperienced, and feels guilty that his parenting of Bruce might have led to his obsessive journey as Batman. Colin Farrell as Oswald Ounce Cobblepot/Penguin, Falcone's chief lieutenant who operates the Iceberg Lounge, the nightclub where Selina works. He is not yet the crime kingpin he is depicted as in the comics, and dislikes being referred to as the Penguin. Reeves explained that the Penguin is a mid-level mobster guy and he's got a bit of showmanship to him, but you can see that he wants more and that he's been underestimated. Reeves compared the Penguin to Fredo Corleone from The Godfather, due to the insignificance that he lives within, in a family that is full of very strong, very bright, very capable, very violent men. Additionally, Jamie Lawson portrays Bella Real, a mayoral candidate for Gotham City who Reeves said represents hope. Gil Perez Abraham portrays Martinez, a GCPD officer. Peter MacDonald portrays William Kenzie, a corrupt GCPD officer. Alex Ferns portrays Pete Savage, the GCPD commissioner. Con O'Neill portrays Mackenzie Bach, the GCPD chief, and Rupert Penry Jones portrays Don Mitchell Jr., Gotham's mayor. Barry Keoghan makes a cameo appearance as the Joker, while other cast members include twins Charlie and Max Carver as Iceberg Lounge bouncers, Hannah Herzog as Annika, Selina's roommate, Jayla Kurgo as a young gang member, Aki Kotobi as a train passenger, Sandra Dickinson as Dory, Bruce's caretaker and housekeeper, and Luke Roberts and Stella Stalker as Bruce's parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne. Production. Development. Ben Affleck. Matt Reeves. Writing. When Reeves decided to focus on Batman earlier in his vigilante career, he began writing a new script from scratch. Affleck's script had taken an action-driven, James Bondian approach, but Reeves wanted a more personal narrative that rocked to his core. He wanted to explore how the Batman mythos could exist in the real world, and chose to set the film during the second year of Batman's career rather than retell the character's origin story, as he wanted his take to be different from previous Batman films. He felt the film was more about someone who hadn't quite figured out why they were doing the thing they were doing and wanted it to focus on Batman's emotional arc, in which you see him go through tremendous trauma and then marshal the will to find a way through. Reeves originally intended for his version of the Batman to be set in the DCEU, but eventually decided that this would distract from Batman's character arc and asked Warner Bros. For the creative freedom to move outside of the shared universe. Reeves wanted to be able to create a version of Batman with a personal aspect to it, and felt he should not be obligated to connect it to other aspects of the DCEU. Warner Bros. Incorporation of the multiverse in its DC productions allowed Reeves to take the project in his own direction. As a consequence, the film takes place in a separate world known as Earth 2. Reeves knew early on that the film would draw from Batman, The Long Halloween and its sequel Dark Victory by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, featuring Batman hunting a serial killer who would reveal this cooperation between the people who are legitimate pillars in the city and the criminal element in the city. He decided to use the Riddler after noting parallels between the character and the Zodiac Killer, a costumed serial killer who operated in California in the 1960s, while reading Mindhunter. Reeves imagined that Batman's investigation would have him encounter other figures from the comic book mythos, leading to the introduction of characters like Catwoman, the Penguin, and Carmine Falcone. However, Reeves sought to ensure that Batman remained the story's focus, and tried to include him in every scene. Reeves reread his favorite Batman comics, but did not base the film on a specific storyline. Particular influence came from Year One by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli, Ego by Darwin Cook, and 0 Year by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, as well as Bob Kane, Bill Finger, and Neil Adams' runs on the character. Reeves drew from the depiction of a young, inexperienced Batman in Year One, Catwoman's relationship to Falcone in The Long Halloween and Dark Victory, the exploration of Batman's psychology and his transition from exacting vengeance to inspiring hope in Ego, and the Riddler's plot to flood Gotham in 0 Year. Other elements, such as Alfred's characterization, Thomas Wayne's mayoral campaign, and Martha Wayne being part of the Arkham family, came from Batman, Earth 1 by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank, while the theme of vengeance was inspired by Kevin Conroy's I Am Vengeance, I Am the Night speech from Batman, the animated series. The film also features references to other comic storylines, including No Man's Land and Hush. In portraying Bruce Wayne, Reeves wanted to depart from the traditional playboy and socialite, because he listened to the Nirvana song Something in the Way as he wrote the first act. He decided to base Bruce on reclusive Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain. He took inspiration from the film Last Days, which features a fictionalized version of Cobain living in a decaying manor. The Godfather character Michael Corleone also influenced Reeves' take on Bruce. Reeves sought to make Batman relatable while honoring what people love about him, and described his Batman as still trying to figure out how to do this, how to be effective, and he's not necessarily succeeding. He's broken and driven. Although it does not depict Batman's origin in which he witnesses the murder of his parents, the Batman still explores the emotional cost that it has on the character, with Reeves stating Batman is emotionally stunted at being 10 years old, because that's a trauma you don't get past. Unlike previous Batman films, the Batman focuses on Batman's detective skills, with Reeves describing it as an almost noir-driven, detective version of Batman emphasizing the character's heart and mind. He said the film blended the detective, action, horror, and psychological thriller genres, which he felt hewed closer to the comics than previous adaptations had. He also felt this approach made it the most frightening Batman film. Reeves looked to films and filmmakers from the New Hollywood era for inspiration, including The French Connection, Clute, Chinatown, All the President's Men, and Taxi Driver, as well as the works of Alfred Hitchcock and Wong Kar-wai's short film The Hand. Chinatown and All the President's Men influenced the Batman's depiction of a corrupt, decaying Gotham, while the relationship between Donald Sutherland and Jane Fonda's characters inspired the dynamic between Batman and Catwoman. Reeves said that he blended the inspirations to inform the story, motivation, imagery, and tone while also conjure something evocative and unique. To convey Batman's insecurity, Reeves added a scene, inspired by Manhunter, featuring him visiting the Joker to profile the Riddler. Reeves also intended for the Joker's appearance to signify that Gotham's troubles would not end after the Riddler is captured. The film contains a number of historical allusions, which Reeves felt would make it more believable. Two characters, Mayor Don Mitchell Jr. and District Attorney Gil Colson, share surnames with Watergate scandal figures John N. Mitchell and Charles Colson, and the Riddler's murder of Colson mirrors the death of Brian Wells. Additionally, Reeves based Falcone on Winter Hill Gang leader Whitey Bulger, citing the documentary Whitey, United States of America v. James J. Bulger as an influence. A number of plot elements mirror events from Bulger's life, including Falcone serving as an informant and bribing city officials. Casting: Robert Pattinson, Nicholas Hoult, Armie Hammer, and Aaron Taylor Johnson were on the short list to replace Affleck as Batman, with Pattinson the frontrunner. Reeves wrote the script with Pattinson in mind after seeing his performance in Good Time, but was unsure if he would be interested. Pattinson had eschewed major Hollywood franchise films since his work on the Twilight series, as he found those roles dull and wanted to avoid paparazzi attention. This meant he had not appeared in Marvel Studios' Marvel Cinematic Universe, which made him desirable to Warner Bros. The other major contender, Hoult, appeared in the Marvel Comics-based X-Men films, but those are separate from the MCU, and Hoult was unrecognizable for much of them due to prosthetics and makeup. Pattinson became interested in the role a year in advance and kept obsessively checking up on it. A longtime Batman fan, he had ideas about how to bring a unique portrayal of the relationship between Batman's superhero activities and his identity as Bruce compared to previous film adaptations, and was interested in the character's lack of superpowers. Reeves spent hours reviewing Pattinson's and Hoult's previous work before meeting with them in April 2019. They were the only contenders for the role by May 20, and both flew to Burbank, California, for a screen test. Pattinson wore Val Kilmer's Batsuit from Batman Forever during his test since it was the only existing costume that fit him. The audition was challenging because the suit was small and difficult to move in, but Pattinson and Reeves found it a transformative experience. Pattinson was cast on May 31, with a salary of $3 million. Pattinson's casting was met with backlash from some Batman fans, with a Change.org petition calling to reverse the decision. Pattinson said he found the response less vitriolic than he had expected, and felt that being an underdog meant he did not have expectations to meet in his performance. Christian Bale, who played Batman in the Dark Knight trilogy, supported Pattinson, encouraging him to make his own and ignore critics. Bale likened the fan revolt to the backlash that Heath Ledger experienced when he was cast as the Joker in The Dark Knight. To prepare, Pattinson studied Batman's history, reading comics spanning from the golden age of comic books to writer Tom King's 2016-2019 run on Batman. He trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with instructor Rigan Machado, wanting to undergo physical change in a similar way to superhero actors like Chris Hemsworth, Dwayne Johnson, Robert Downey Jr., and Chris Evans. He received advice from the Dark Knight trilogy director Christopher Nolan while working with him on Tenet. Jeffrey Wright is the first actor of color to portray Gordon. He felt his casting reflected how diverse America has become since Batman's introduction in 1939, and said none of Gordon's qualities require that he be white. In preparation, Wright read Batman comics, including The Long Halloween. He looked to Golden Age comics because he felt there was long arc for Gordon from then until today, which inspired his performance. He also based his performance on police officer turned mayor of New York City Eric Adams. Jonah Hill initially entered negotiations to play either the Riddler or the Penguin, but exited negotiations after a month. According to Variety's Justin Kroll, Hill wanted $10 million, more than double the amount Pattinson would earn, while Kit reported that Warner Brothers and Hill could not decide which role he would take. Paul Dano was cast as the Riddler after Hill exited talks. To prepare, Dano researched serial killers and chose to read this material in public places since he found it disturbing and did not want to read it alone. He used the Beach Boys founder Brian Wilson, whom he had portrayed in the 2014 biopic Love and Mercy, as the basis of his performance, and was also influenced by Nirvana's songs. Reeves himself wrote the Riddler's character with Dano's portrayal of Wilson in mind. Dano thought about the Riddler's motivations and the sense of power the character feels when wearing a mask, and worked with a mask expert to figure out how to approach the role in costume. Zoe Kravitz was cast as Catwoman following a screen test with Pattinson. She had previously voiced the character in the Lego Batman movie. Casting director Cindy Tolan suggested Kravitz, and Reeves chose her over actresses such as Ana de Armas, Ella Balinska, and Isa Gonzalez, who also auditioned for the role, as well as Zazie Beetz, Alicia Vikander, Hannah John Kamen, and Natalie Emmanuel. Kravitz was reluctant to join another superhero film after working on X-Men: First Class, but was a fan of the Catwoman character and felt connected to her emotionally and also aesthetically. She felt that her honesty with Reeves played a large part in her selection, and explained that she wanted Reeves to know what working with her would be like. She provided advice on how to develop Catwoman's character, and began training with instructor David Higgins 2 months before shooting. Kravitz also studied footage of cats and lions fighting to develop her movements while practicing with stunt coordinator Rob Alonzo. She drew inspiration from Year One and Michelle Pfeiffer's portrayal of Catwoman in Batman Returns. Reeves approached Andy Serkis regarding the role of Alfred during post-production on War for the Planet of the Apes, and he was eager to work with Reeves again. Colin Farrell and John Turturro were respectively cast as the Penguin and Carmine Falcone. Farrell looked to the Godfather character Fredo Corleone for inspiration and worked with dialect coach Jessica Drake to develop the Penguin's voice, while Turturro collaborated with his son Amadeo, who is an editor at DC Comics, and Reeves to develop Falcone and his mannerisms. Turturro drew inspiration from warnings his father gave him about the Mafia as a child growing up in New York City. Other cast members include Jamie Lawson, Peter Sarsgaard, Gil Perez-Abraham, twins Charlie and Max Carver, Rupert Penry-Jones, Jay Licurgo, and Con O'Neill. Licurgo, who portrays a criminal, shot his scenes a year before he joined the DC series Titans as Tim Drake. Reeves was unsure if the Joker's appearance would be kept in the theatrical release, or if the actor playing him would be able to reprise the role in the future. Consequently, he felt the actor who played the Joker needed to be fearless. Reeves met with Barry Keoghan, who was eager to take up the offer. The production team attempted to keep Keoghan's role a secret by announcing that he was portraying the Year One character Stanley Merkel when he was cast, but Keoghan's brother revealed the truth on social media ahead of the film's release. Design, sets and props, Batsuit. Other costumes. Filming. Principal photography began in January 2020 in London, under the working title Vengeance, and wrapped on March 13, 2021. Second unit filming took place in December 2019. Greg Fraser served as cinematographer. He previously worked with Reeves on Let Me In. Cemetery scenes were filmed at the Glasgow Necropolis in Scotland in mid-February 2020, before relocating to Liverpool in March. Filming in London took place at the O2 Arena, Printworks nightclub, Kingsway Tramway subway, the Two Temple Place, the Somerset House, and areas near the River Thames. Filming in Liverpool took place at St George's Hall, Anfield Cemetery, Walker Art Gallery, Wellington Square, County Sessions House, and the Royal Liver Building. One scene was filmed at the abandoned Hartwood Hospital in Shotts, Scotland, while some exterior shots and stunts were filmed in Chicago. Fraser used digital capture on ARRI Alexa LF cameras, with custom alpha anamorphic lenses. Fraser cited cinematographer Gordon Willis' lighting work on Clute, The Godfather, and All the President's Men, as well as photographer Todd Hido, as inspiration, and at Reeves' suggestion attempted to convey the film from Batman's point of view. He described shooting the film as one of the most challenging lighting jobs I've ever done. Filming Pattinson in the Batsuit was particularly difficult since he did not want shadows to obscure the costume's details. Pattinson broke his wrist performing a stunt towards the beginning of production, and described feeling very much alone while filming due to the insular nature of nighttime filming and his inability to take off his costume offset. Reeves was a meticulous director and described the Batman as the most intricate narrative I have ever tried to tackle. Pattinson said Reeves asked for many retakes and adjusting to such an approach took some time. Kravitz described Reeves as the most specific person and director I've ever worked with, citing a particular instance in which he told her not to close her mouth since he thought it needed to be open to convey a certain emotion. Reeves showed the different takes to the actors after filming to illustrate the make-or-break nuances he had seen. One scene, in which Batman and the Riddler communicate via videotelephony, took over 200 takes. Pattinson guessed that Reeves was editing the entire movie, every single take, which Reeves said was correct and not something that other actors he had worked with had observed. Reeves developed this style of filming, in which he spent more time on fewer angles, while directing the television series Felicity. For fight scenes, Reeves wanted to depart from the kinetic, quick-cutting sequences that previous Batman directors like Tim Burton and Nolan had shot. He wanted viewers to actually see what's happening, in a way that is utterly convincing. The Batmobile chase scene's cinematography was inspired by the car chase scene in The French Connection. Reeves originally planned to film the scene on a Liverpool freeway, but instead filmed it at the Dunsfold Aerodrome after determining that a racetrack would allow for more control. Parts were also filmed at the Corydon refinery. A camera car with a 360-degree Hydra-like rig attached was used to capture background plate shots. The shot in which the Batmobile jumps through the fire was done practically, though the fireballs were enhanced in post-production. The interior shots of the Penguin's car rolling were achieved with a rotisserie rig on a rotating gimbal attached to the car that Farrell was in. To convey the chase from Batman's perspective, Fraser attached cameras to cars and motorbikes, even though it was technically really hard to do. We fought against logistics. We fought against time. We fought against everything that told us to not do it that way. Fraser used different camera lenses and covered them in silicone to simulate rain and dirt and immerse the viewer. Industrial Light and Magic provided the stagecraft virtual production technology that Fraser helped develop on the Disney and Star Wars series The Mandalorian, with a wall of LED panels allowing visual effects backgrounds to be rendered in real time via Unreal Engine 4. The wall was built around existing practical sets. It was used for scenes involving the abandoned skyscraper where the bat signal is stationed so Reeves and Fraser could film with consistent golden hour lighting, which is difficult when shooting on location. Using virtual production also meant the lighting impacted on the actors and set in a way that green screen technology could not. Reeves was inspired by the lighting from In the Mood for Love. The production team only had a few weeks to shoot the scenes. Reeves filmed fake scenes with Keoghan portraying Merkel to prevent his actual role from leaking, and during the actual Joker scenes, Reeves kept Keoghan's face out of focus to signify that the Joker was still in his formative stages. The production team briefly discussed removing the subplot in which the Riddler's online followers attempt to assassinate Bella Real due to its similarities to the 2021 United States Capitol attack, which occurred during the final months of filming, but Reeves decided it was too integral to the story and different enough from the attack. COVID-19 pandemic. Editing. The Batmobile chase was the first scene that sound editor Will Files worked on, and he used a bottle rocket sound effect as the basis for how the car sounded. Files worked with Douglas Murray and Andy Nelson to complete the sequence. The Batmobile's main engine noise came from a Ford big block engine, while the supercharger sound effect was a reversed World War II Jeep recording. Warner Bros. Held test screenings in late 2021. Some early screenings showed a 4-hour-long cut. Test audiences were not told they were seeing the Batman until entering the theater. The first cut was longer than Reeves intended, and he described it as rough, saying, "I was not all the way through the cut of the movie. There was so much of the movie yet to be touched." Reeves was terrified going into the first test screening, but was relieved when test audiences enjoyed the complex narrative. He felt it kind of validated that this was a direction that an audience would be excited about, and future test screenings were met with improving reception. Reeves made way, bit by bit through the cut and tiny adjustments to make sure that little things that may be not clear enough clearer. Later test screenings showed 2 cuts, with an unknown actor, possibly Keoghan, included in only one. The final screening took place during the week beginning November 29, after which Warner Bros. Executives decided which cut they preferred. Reeves kept the penultimate scene in which the Joker befriends the Riddler in Arkham because he felt it heightened the stakes of Batman and Catwoman's final conversation while completing the Riddler's story arc, but he cut the Manhunter-inspired scene for being unnecessary and disrupting the pacing. The final cut runs at 176 minutes including credits, making The Batman the longest Batman film and the third longest superhero film after Zack Snyder's Justice League and Avengers, Endgame. In January 2022, The Batman received a PG-13 rating from the Motion Picture Association, despite wide speculation and internal discussions at Warner Bros. That its somber tone and violent content would lead to it being the first theatrical Batman film with an R rating. The film was able to receive a PG-13 rating because it does not include excessive profanity or nudity. Rebecca Rubin of Variety opined that an R rating could have hurt the film's box office potential by preventing many young males from seeing it, noting that the 2 previous R-rated DC films, Birds of Prey and The Suicide Squad, both underperformed commercially. Reeves said that he always intended to make the Batman PG-13 and that there was not an alternate R-rated cut. He added that a PG-13 rating was one of the only studio mandates he faced. Visual effects. Dan Lemon served as the visual effects supervisor, after previously collaborating with Reeves on the Planet of the Apes films. Visual effects vendors included WTA with Macron FX, ILM, Scanline VFX, and Crafty Apes, with over 1,500 visual effects shots created on a $20 million budget. According to Lemon, ILM led the work on Gotham, and their stagecraft group handled the real-time LED backgrounds during production. Scanline VFX took on most of the third act and the heavy simulation work. WTA with Macron FX did the Batmobile chase and a few other standalone environments. And then Crafty Apes did a substantial amount of R2D work, with splits, retimes, stabilizations, monitors and other cleanup work. Chinland designed the Gotham cityscape so it could be created digitally by ILM and displayed in the background of scenes using the stagecraft technology. He used plate shots from London, New York, and Chicago. According to Lemon, Reeves wanted the cityscapes to capture the forms, architecture, and the fabric of the city to look like it was really in decay. Chinland originated the idea to place the bat signal on an abandoned building rather than on top of the GCPD building. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, a majority of the buildings were created using computer-generated imagery. Lemon stated that using Unreal Engine to render the LED walls in real time helped the team plan out the logistics for filming various scenes, such as how big the sets needed to be, where process screens would go, what the extensions would look like through the camera, where stunt rigging and special effects equipment would go, while also allowing Fraser to adjust the lighting. Portable LED screens showing advertisements were used when filming scenes in Gotham Square to augment the lighting of the jumbotrons in post. WTA with Macron FX created over 320 VFX shots for the film. They had begun contacting Lemon and Warner Brothers about working on the film by the middle of 2019. Anders Langlands, the visual effects supervisor for WTA with Macron, had already traveled to the UK by December 2019 to see pre-production work. While they were initially planned to be on set during filming, this did not happen due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Langlands had said that WTA with Macron had worked on the film for over a year and that the team had managed to do a great job in getting everybody set up for that very quickly, and it was actually a very, very smooth transition. It was responsible for fleshing out the Batmobile chase. It used CGI to add rain and vehicles and helped form the beats of the chase, such as when the Penguin causes a fuel truck explosion. One of WTA with Macron's biggest tasks was replicating Fraser's lighting, which they performed using the Manuka renderer and virtual cinematography. The team also bought glass plates and silicone sealants to replicate Fraser's process of inserting silicone on the lenses. Furthermore, the team, including the compositing staff members Peter Hillman, Ben Morgan, and Beck Veach, also had upgraded their tools that performed deep focus effects, which allowed them to emulate the way bokeh and optical vignetting resulted from Fraser's camera lens. The team had difficulty inserting rain in the Batmobile chase due to the physics and oscillation of rain in real life, which they wanted to replicate. They began by creating a rain primitive to adjust the speed and phases of the rain oscillation, while supervisor Christos Parlernos set the primitive on the Houdini particle system to animate the rain speed. The team also created an adjustable car rig for the camera team to track, which they called the clown car. The camera team could adjust the headlights and wheels, which allowed the VFX team to have an accurate 3D model for every car being used, thus facilitating inserting additional cars to pre-existing plates. Other CG parts of the scene included the collision of the Batmobile with the Penguin's car and Batman's cape and boots. WTA with Macron also designed the entrance of the Batcave to accommodate shots of Bruce's motorcycle. Reeves could not film the scenes due to the size of the sets. They digitally created the space using models provided by the art department and plate shots. It sought to emulate Fraser's lighting, drew inspiration from the Tribune Tower, and inserted bats. Additionally, WTA with Macron used CG to create the higher balcony and windows for the City Hall set, as the practical set ended at the first balcony. The team experienced difficulty compositing the CGI architecture with the practical due to the distortion and focus falloff caused by the lenses. In fight scenes, the team replaced stunt double Rick English's face with Pattinson's using paintings and facial animations. Scanline VFX created over 217 VFX shots across 11 sequences. It was responsible for creating the destruction of the water dams, the subsequent tsunami rushing towards Gotham Square Gardens, and Catwoman's burglary. For the burglary, the team used digital doubles for Pattinson and Kravitz and facial replacements for footage filmed with stunt doubles. A CGI arena was created for the gardens so that cameras could be placed anywhere on set. Its exterior was based on scans and plate shots of exterior locations in Chicago and the Madison Square Garden, while the ground level and entrance were based the O2 Arena. The overall arena set was the only one that used blue screens, with principal photography from O2 being used to create the backgrounds. Simulations were used to replicate water, architectural destruction, fire, smoke, and electric arcing for the final act, with Houdini being used for rigid body simulations and Flowline for water simulations. The artists began by creating low-resolution simulations, with footage of tsunamis being used as reference, and progressively animated it faster. They did not have to adjust the lighting too much, and mainly focused on color-correcting the water. Practical explosions were modified with CGI, while other modifications included environmental interactions, such as fire lighting, smoke, and shockwaves generating dust and dirt. Rendering glass during the explosion of the Gotham Square Garden's roof was difficult due to the pings, reflections, and refractions, while scenes involving arcing electricity from disconnected cables and rafter beams from the interior of Gotham Square Gardens also required significant art direction. The team also performed set extensions from practical sets and reconstructed it using plate photography for action scenes located in the rafters. They also used Eyeline Studios' volumetric capture tools to replace the stunt doubles' faces. Additional setups were created to match Fraser's process of inserting caulk on the lenses, while crowds were inserted using CGI. Music. In October 2019, Reeves announced that his frequent collaborator Michael Giacchino would be composing the film's score. Later that month, Giacchino said he had already finished writing the main theme for the film because he was so excited to do so, because this music was written much earlier in the production than is usual for a film. Giacchino and Reeves were able to use it in promotional materials. Giacchino said he felt total freedom to write the music that he wanted for the film, agreeing with Reeves that this was their vision of Batman, similar to how different comic book and graphic novel authors and artists over the years had been able to create different takes on the character. Giacchino completed the score in October 2021, and his main theme was released as a single on January 21, 2022. Giacchino's theme for the Riddler was released as a single on February 4, and his Catwoman theme was released as the third and final single on February 17. The full soundtrack album was released on February 25. Something in the Way appears twice in the film, and was noted to have a similar bass line to Giacchino's score. He acknowledged this, but said it was a lucky coincidence. Ave Maria by Franz Schubert is also featured and was performed by the Tiffin Boys Choir and Dano. Marketing. Reeves released moody, red saturated test footage of Pattinson in his Batman costume on February 13, 2020. The footage included early music written by Giacchino, and generated discussion about the film's approach to Batman. Chris Evangelista of Slash Film thought Pattinson's Batman looked much different from previous film depictions, while Richard Newby of The Hollywood Reporter identified the costume's various references to past incarnations. Newby also noted that the bat emblem on the costume's chest resembled a pistol, and wondered if it was the pistol used to kill Batman's parents in his origin story. The footage's use of the color red also led to discussion of how the Batman would differ tonally from previous adaptations. On March 4, Reeves released an image of the film's Batmobile. Dino Ray Ramos of Deadline Hollywood opined that it seemed sexier and more streamlined than Batmobiles from the past, giving off James Bond meets Fast and Furious energy that seemed appropriate for Pattinson's version of the character. Reeves debuted a teaser trailer during the virtual DC Fandom event on August 22, featuring a remix of the Nirvana song Something in the Way combined with Giacchino's score. The trailer received 34 million views within 24 hours, and according to CNET's Bonnie Burton and Jennifer Bissett, it set the internet on fire. They noted its somber, grim tone. Katrina Natraz of Spin and John Saavedra at Den of Geek respectively described its depiction of Gotham City as dystopic and nightmarish. Adam Chitwood of Collider praised what he saw as a genuinely refreshing approach to depicting the world of Batman, and Saavedra wrote that it made the Batman look more like a detective story than a superhero film. Alex Abbott Santos of Vox felt the film had more in common with the R-rated Batman spin-off Joker than other contemporary DC films. Abbott Santos also noted that some critics disliked the trailer's dark tone, as previous Batman films were similarly dark and some aren't in the mood to watch all that darkness over again, but felt the Batman could show that carte blanche reactionary violence, retribution rewarded with material wealth, and a soulless existence driven by bloody, bone-snapping ambition isn't actually something regular people want to emulate. Reeves and Pattinson discussed the film at the Warner Bros. Cinemacon panel on August 24, 2021, where a sizzle reel of new footage was shown. Reeves, Pattinson, and Kravitz debuted a second trailer as the finale of DC Fandom on October 16. Daniel Chin at The Ringer said the trailer had been a highly anticipated part of the virtual event, and felt it did not disappoint. He and other commentators highlighted the trailer's dark, violent, and brutal approach to the character, which Chin felt was consistent with the teaser trailer. Adam B. Vary of Variety specifically compared the tone to Christopher Nolan's gritty Dark Knight films, believing the Batman would be darker and more violent than even those films. Vary, Chin, and Entertainment Weekly's Chancellor Agard all highlighted the trailer's footage of Farrell and his physical transformation for the role of Penguin. A Japanese trailer released on December 12 quickly led to discussion and speculation that the Joker would appear after fans spotted a figure resembling the character on a newspaper prop in the footage. Warner Bros. Launched a viral marketing campaign in December 2021 with the website www.ratedalada.com. The website allows users to engage in simulated conversations with the Riddler, and solving his riddles unlocks promotional artwork. The final reward for the website was the deleted scene where Batman meets with Keoghan's Joker in Arkham. A third trailer, titled The Bat and the Cat, was released on December 27 and focuses on the relationship between Batman and Catwoman. Films Jeremy Mathey already felt the film's marketing had been great and was impressed that this was yet another incredible trailer. Asha Barbashaw and Rob Bricken of Gizmodo opined that Pattinson looked like a better Batman than his predecessors, Bale and Affleck. They were intrigued by the trailer's implication that the Riddler would position himself as an agent of justice and were excited at the prospect of Reeves altering Batman's origin story. In February 2022, more footage from the film was released as part of a teaser for Warner Bros.' 2022 slate of DC films, which at that time included Black Adam, The Flash, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Warner Media spent over $28 million on television advertisements and licensed a significant amount of merchandise to promote the film. It described the promotion as the largest Batman merchandise collection in a decade. Promotion included Hot Wheels toys from Mattel, Lego sets, action figures from McFarlane Toys and Funko, clothing, cosmetics, and Aria cookies. Warner Bros. Partnered with Universal Pictures and the Supercars Championship to adorn a livery inspired by the Batman on the Ford Mustang GT Course car, while Google, independently from Warner Bros., updated Google Search to display a bat signal Easter egg for Batman-related search queries in February 2022. Warner Bros. Consumer Products and DC Comics partnered with Puma to release a collection of products like footwear, accessories, and apparels featuring Batman, the Batmobile, and Bat Emblem. DC Comics published the Batman box set, a trade paperback collection featuring a slipcase with art by Jim Lee and The Year One, The Long Halloween, and Ego Comics, in March 2022. Additionally, most of DC's March 2022 Batman-related comics feature variant covers based on the film. Release. Theatrical. Special screenings were held in Paris on February 21, 2022, and London on February 23, 2022. The Batman's world premiere was held at Lincoln Center in New York City on March 1, 2022, alongside 350 advance IMAX screenings across the United States, ahead of its wide release by Warner Bros. Pictures on March 4. It was originally set for release on June 25, 2021, before it was pushed back to October 1, 2021, and then to March 2022, both times after Warner Bros. Adjusted its release schedule due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Batman was the first superhero film to be released in China since Wonder Woman 1984, after multiple Marvel films were denied releases in 2021. Warner Bros. Cancelled the Russian release in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Home media. The Batman was released for digital download, as well as to stream on HBO Max, on April 18, 2022, a day earlier than announced. It became the first Warner Bros. Distributed film in over a year that did not stream on HBO Max simultaneously with its theatrical release. The film's linear television premiere was on HBO on April 23, followed by physical release on Ultra HD Blu-ray, and DVD by Warner Bros. Home Entertainment on May 24. According to Samba TV, the film was streamed by 720,000 American households during its first day of release on HBO Max. It also had the most successful premiere for any film on HBO Max in Latin America. Samba TV reported that by the end of its first week, the movie had been watched by 4.1 million American households. This was higher than the viewership for nearly all day and date films released on HBO Max and the second best for a film on the platform during the first week of release, behind Mortal Kombat, which had a viewership of 4.3 million households. Reception. Box office. The Batman grossed $369.3 million in the United States and Canada, and $401.5 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $770.8 million. It is the fifth highest grossing film of 2022, as well as the highest grossing serial killer film. The film's IMAX performance helped raise its overall first quarter revenues by 55% and its global box office by 57% from the same period in 2021. In the US and Canada, The Batman was projected to gross $115–170 million from 4,417 theaters in its opening weekend, and around $334–75 million for its total domestic box office. Tickets for the advance IMAX screenings sold out within a day of going on sale on February 8, 2022. The film made $57 million on its first day in the US and Canada, which included $17.6 million from Thursday night previews and $4 million from Tuesday and Wednesday advanced screenings. It grossed $134 million in its opening weekend, becoming the second pandemic-era film to gross over $100 million in the US and Canada in its opening weekend, after Spider-Man: No Way Home. It also became Warner Bros.' highest-grossing pandemic-era film domestically in just 3 days. More than 65% of the audience in the opening weekend was male, while more than 60% were in the age range of 18–34 years old. The film grossed $66.5 million in its second weekend, dropping 50% and staying atop the box office. The third weekend saw it gross $36.7 million, a fall of 45%, while also making it the second film in the pandemic era to make more than $300 million in the US and Canada. In the fourth weekend it was displaced to the second spot by The Lost City, earning $20.5 million for a drop of 44%. In South Korea, The Batman opened to $1.7 million, the biggest opening in the country in 2022. Through March 2, it had earned $5.3 million across 8 countries. In France, it earned $2.1 million, the highest opening for 2022. Through March 4, it had made an estimated $54 million in 74 countries outside the US and Canada. In the United Kingdom it opened to $6.4 million, the second highest opening in the country during the pandemic. It had the second highest pandemic opening in Spain as well, earning $1.2 million. It grossed around $124.2 million by the end of the week in 74 countries outside the US and Canada, and ranked first in 73 of them during the weekend. It earned $22.3 million globally in IMAX theaters, the second highest opening weekend for the chain since December 2019. This was also the highest opening for a movie outside the US and Canada in 2022, the highest for Warner in the pandemic era, as well as the third biggest overall during the pandemic. In addition, it had the second highest opening weekend of the pandemic era in 16 countries including the UK, Mexico, Australia, Brazil, France, Germany, South Korea, Italy, Spain, and India. It also earned the biggest opening weekend for Warner Bros. In 62 countries during the pandemic and its biggest ever opening weekend in 7 countries. The film earned $66.6 million from 76 markets other than the US and Canada in its sophomore weekend for a drop of 42%, including a $3.2 million opening in Japan. The film reached the $500 million milestone on March 17, becoming the 8th pandemic-era film to do so, while also becoming Warner Bros.' highest-grossing film during the pandemic era. In its third weekend, it made $49.1 million in countries other than the US and Canada, a drop of 46%. In China, it opened to a $11.8 million weekend according to Artisan Gateway, while 43% of the theaters were closed, the best opening in the country for an American film in 2022, acquiring the top position at the box office. It grossed $25.3 million during the fourth weekend for a fall of 49%, including $3.1 million in China, where it was displaced by Moonfall. It crossed the $750 million milestone on April 17, becoming the 5th pandemic-era film to do so, with the largest running total countries being the UK, Mexico, Australia, France, Brazil, China, Germany, Spain, Italy, and Japan. Critical response. On the review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, The Batman holds an approval rating of 85% based on 499 reviews, with an average rating of 7.6/10. The site's critical consensus reads, "A grim, gritty, and gripping super-noir, The Batman ranks among The Dark Knight's bleakest and most thrillingly ambitious live-action outings." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 72 out of 100, based on 68 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A and to F scale, while those at PostTrack gave it an 87% positive score, with 71% saying they would definitely recommend it. IGN contributor Alex Steadman gave a 10 out of 10 rating, writing, "The Batman is a gripping, gorgeous, and at times genuinely scary psychological crime thriller that gives Bruce Wayne the grounded detective story he deserves." Adam Naiman of The Ringer gave the film a mostly positive review, but criticized some aspects of the film, particularly the final act. However, he stated that The Batman is the Batman movie we deserve, though overwrought and overlong, but also carefully crafted and exhilarating. "It's just good enough to wish it were better, a lavish piece of intellectual property that ultimately prices itself out of providing cheap thrills." Writing for The National, Jason Mottram called the film one of the darkest and most compelling comic book movies of the modern era while praising the performances, action sequences, and story. Digital Spy reviewer Ian Sandwell praised the performances and felt that it's easy to get Batman wrong, but Reeves never even threatens to do so. The Batman is an enthralling, chilling, and fresh new take on the iconic DC hero that'll leave you desperate for another visit to this impeccably crafted world. Clarice Lowry of The Independent gave the film a rating of 4/5 and wrote, "Matt Reeves's take on the Caped Crusader may not be a genre-defining miracle, but it delivers a tapered-down, intimate portrait, while Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman brings an almost extinct sensuality to the role." From The Hollywood Reporter, David Rooney praised the film for being unique and stated that this ambitious reboot is grounded in a contemporary reality where institutional and political distrust breeds unhinged vigilantism, but felt that Reeves' film hammers home the realization that somewhere along the line, someone, probably Christopher Nolan, decided that Batman movies should no longer be fun. Peter DeBrugge at Variety also praised the film, highlighting the film's grounded and noir take on Batman, and praised the film for its willingness to dismantle and interrogate the very concept of superheroes. Alex Abbott Santos of Vox gave the film a positive review, and wrote the film realizes the character's greatness in a classic noir detective story and that the film enriches Batman's legacy, complicating it by trusting its audience to interrogate his heroism and eventually ponder what makes Batman a hero or if he's even a hero at all. Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian praised the performances but felt that inevitably, night falls on the latest Batman iteration with the cloudy sense that of course nothing has really been at stake. Richard Brody at The New Yorker gave a more critical review, praising the first 2 hours of the film and the intricacy of the movie's intertwined plots, but ultimately criticized the characters, as he felt that they were reduced to a handful of traits and a backstory, defined solely by their function in the plot. Ann Hornaday from The Washington Post rated the film 1.5 out of 4 stars, criticizing the film for its dark visuals and its lengthy runtime, calling it yet another lugubrious, laboriously grim slog masquerading as a fun comic book movie. Similarly, A.O. Scott of The New York Times also criticized the film for its dark visuals, in addition to saying the film has too much exposition, but praised the performances from the cast and Giacchino's score, and ultimately concluded by stating, "I can't say I had a good time, but I did end up somewhere I didn't expect to be, looking forward to the next chapter." Mick LaSalle of the San Francisco Chronicle also gave a negative review, criticizing the film for its political commentary, drawing comparisons to that of Joker, but he also praised some of the performances. Writing for Sight and Sound, Kim Newman gave an unenthusiastic review, criticizing the film's length, and felt the secondary characters, such as Lieutenant Gordon, Selina Kyle, Alfred, and Penguin, were underdeveloped and subordinate to the case, though he praised Pattinson's performance and the detective-oriented Batman. Accolades. Thematic analysis. Class conflict and inequality. Class conflict is a central concept featured in the Batman, with Marco Vito Otto of Collider asserting that the main theme is social inequality. 3 of the primary characters, Batman, the Riddler, and Catwoman, are orphans from different economic backgrounds. Whereas Batman grew up in privilege, the Riddler only knew torment, while Catwoman experienced hardship. The Riddler's frustration with his upbringing leads to him lashing out against the wealthy, reflecting that criminality is born from desperation. J.M. Muteri of the AV Club and Susanna Polo of Polygon said the Riddler falls into the trap of villains who are right, opining that he is correct to expose corruption that has harmed the unfortunate. Krishan Baker of Inverse added that the film never frames the Riddler's frustration as wrong, though Brandon Zachary of Comic Book Resources argued that the Riddler is inherently wrong to think that change can be achieved through violence even if his motivations are understandable. Zachary wrote that Batman, Catwoman, and the Riddler's upbringings give each character a different worldview. Batman's is narrow and binary, the Riddler adopts a bitter and cruel method to fight corruption that harms innocents, and Catwoman acknowledges the corrupting power of wealth but only becomes violent when her friends are harmed. The film draws parallels between the 3 characters, reflecting a popular notion that Batman is similar to his adversaries. Adam Naiman of The Ringer felt the film highlighted the themes of duality between Batman and his foes, and opined that Batman and the Riddler feel like secret siblings rather than 2 different case studies in forlorn orphan psychology. Catwoman and the Riddler make Batman realize that poverty and inequality are the roots of Gotham's troubles, and inspire him to become an agent of hope and use his wealth to prevent social inequality. Baker wrote that the film ends with Batman realizing he has to fight for the will of the people, amongst the people, against the very same institutions that make hollow promises to protect them. Depiction of Batman. Baker said that previous Batman films tend to reflect right-wing themes, with Tim Burton and Christopher Nolan's adaptations respectively featuring libertarian and vaguely authoritarian depictions of Batman. The Batman departs by questioning Batman's ethics and focusing on his material wealth. The film highlights that Batman's wealth does not alleviate his suffering and explores the idea that he should be more philanthropic. Initially, Batman does not realize he is taking his wealth for granted and could be using it to help Gotham. Mudry felt the Batman was more direct in addressing the issue than previous Batman films, but circumvents this argument by portraying Thomas Wayne's attempt at philanthropy as only leading to corruption, while Baker felt the film directly addresses the issue by having progressive mayoral candidate Bella Real confront Bruce about his wealth. Conversely, Naiman argued the film does not focus on his class as much as previous films did, as he is depicted as a recluse in the film. The Batman also explores grief, trauma, and the horror of living with post-traumatic stress disorder through Batman. Batman's initial antagonism towards Alfred and apathy towards Catwoman's situation stems from the death of his parents and his inability to communicate with people due to his fear of suffering more emotional pain. His obsession with solving the Riddler case is a method of coping with the trauma of losing his parents, while his obsession with being Batman is the result of channeling his rage into what Marcus Shorter of Bloody Disgusting called a dogmatic dedication to his chosen crime-fighting craft. The film ends with Batman realizing that he must process his trauma to help improve Gotham. Batman's relationship with the police differs from previous Batman films. Burton's films depict the police as an incompetent force that Batman supersedes, and Nolan's depict them bending the law to assist Batman. The Batman shows Batman having a hostile relationship with Gotham police, who see him as a criminal. Baker said that very time Batman interacts with the police, there's a palpable sense of discomfort. To them, Batman represents a level of oversight that they're not used to having to contend with. Baker called this timely given the contemporary American socio-political context, including increased awareness of police brutality. Tie-in media. A prequel novel, Before the Batman, an original movie novel, was written by David Lehman and released on February 1, 2022. It explores the origins of Batman and the Riddler. In March, Reeves announced Riddler, Year 1, a prequel comic book published bi-monthly through DC's adult-oriented Black Label imprint beginning in October 2022. The 6-issue limited series is written by Dano and illustrated by Steven Subic. Future sequels. The Batman is intended to be the first of a new Batman film trilogy and establish a Batman-focused shared universe separate from the DCEU. Key cast members had signed on for future films by November 2019. In December 2021, Pattinson said he had ideas for developing Batman's character in further films, while Clarke said the Batman would lay a foundation for future films to build upon. Pattinson and Reeves expressed interest in introducing Robin and featuring the Court of Owls, Calendar Man, Mr. Freeze, or Hush as villains in a sequel. A sequel was announced at Cinemacon in April 2022, with Pattinson and Reeves set to return. Spin-off series. Untitled GCPD series. I the Penguin / I. None. Untitled Arkham series. Other potential projects. In October 2022, The Hollywood Reporter stated that Matt Reeves was meeting with writers and directors regarding additional films and television series centered around Batman's Rogues Gallery. Various projects focusing on Scarecrow, Clayface, and Professor Pyg are in early stages of development. Notes.